Victor Wembanyama is 22 years old, and the NBA has already run out of normal ways to describe his start. In his third season, he became the youngest Defensive Player of the Year ever, won the award unanimously, and made first-team All-NBA. Then, in his first postseason, he helped San Antonio eliminate the defending champions and reach the NBA Finals. The Spurs lost to New York, but that loss did not end the conversation around Victor. It changed the question. We are no longer wondering whether he can become a superstar. That part is settled. Now we have to ask how high this can really go, and whether the Spurs can turn one historic beginning into an era. The wrong question is whether Wembanyama already belongs beside Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, or Tim Duncan. Of course he does not. 3 seasons cannot compete with careers that shaped the league for decades. The useful question is what must happen for this start to become the first chapter of one of the greatest careers basketball has ever seen. Victor has 4 enormous tests ahead of him. He must become the best player in the league over a full season, develop an offensive answer that survives playoff pressure, turn San Antonio into a repeat championship contender, and remain healthy long enough to build a resume that lasts. There is no single blueprint for reaching the top of NBA history. Jordan built his case through an overwhelming peak and 6 championships. LeBron combined dominance with more than 2 decades of elite production. Russell became the center of a dynasty, and Duncan gave San Antonio 19 seasons of stability, 5 championships, and elite two-way impact across several versions of the team. Wembanyama does not have to copy any one of those careers, but he does need a resume strong enough to compete with the qualities they represent: peak dominance, longevity, winning, adaptation, and the ability to remain the foundation of a contender year after year. The first test is becoming the best player in basketball over the course of an entire season. Wembanyama may already be the league's most disruptive defender. He protects the rim, survives switches, and changes which shots opponents are willing to attempt. But the highest individual level requires more than owning one side of the floor. Jordan could take over games as a scorer and defender. LeBron could control the action with scoring, passing, and physical force. Duncan anchored championship defenses while giving San Antonio a dependable offensive center. Victor's defense gives him a head start almost no young superstar has ever had. His offense must now become consistent enough to match that impact night after night. That does not mean he has to become a point guard or lead the league in assists. It means controlling games before they reach the final possession. He already averaged 25 points in fewer than 30 minutes per game, so volume is not the concern. The concern is command. Can he decide where the offense begins? Can he punish a matchup before the defense sends help? Can he create advantages for Fox, Castle, Harper, and the shooters around him without forcing difficult attempts? Becoming the best player in the league requires a complete regular season body of work: elite production, availability, team success, and two-way influence that no other player can consistently match. The second test is different. It is not about dominating from October through April. It is about having one offensive answer that still works after a playoff defense spends an entire series trying to remove it. The finals showed both the problem and the possibility. In Game 1 against New York, Wembanyama scored 26 points and grabbed 12 rebounds, but shot 6 for 21 as the Knicks crowded his catches and pushed him away from his preferred areas. 2 games later, with San Antonio facing a 2-0 deficit, he answered with 32 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steals in a win at Madison Square Garden. That response mattered because Victor adjusted after the defense made him uncomfortable. But the greatest playoff players do not solve the problem once. They keep solving it after the opponent changes the coverage again. For Wembanyama, that leap comes down to 3 questions. Can he establish deeper position before the ball arrives? Can he recognize the double team quickly enough to punish it? And can he create one efficient shot when everyone in the arena knows San Antonio is playing through him? He already has an enormous collection of moves, but 10 options are not as valuable as one answer he completely trusts under pressure. That dependable action could unlock the entire Spurs offense. Fox would see cleaner driving lanes, Castle and Harper could attack defenses that were already rotating. Shooters would receive better looks because opponents could no longer send help toward Victor without giving something up immediately. This is what playoff control really means. It is not simply scoring more points. It is forcing the defense to choose which advantage San Antonio receives. Wembanyama already creates that kind of pressure defensively. If he can reproduce it on offense when the game slows down, the Spurs could build a championship system around the problems he creates on every possession. The third test is winning, and not only once. Reaching the finals at 22 is an extraordinary start, but the greatest careers are built when one run becomes an era. Jordan won 6 championships. Russell won 11. Duncan kept San Antonio in contention across different teammates, styles, and stages of his own career. Wembanyama does not need to match one exact ring total before the conversation becomes serious. But he does need multiple seasons where the road to the championship runs through San Antonio. One title would prove that his style can win at the highest level. Repeated contention would prove that the first title was not one perfect postseason. This is where the Spurs matter as much as Wembanyama. No all-time career is built by one player working alone. San Antonio has already surrounded him with a young core that includes Castle and Harper, an established creator in Fox, and several players who experienced the finals before reaching their primes. That gives the franchise options, but it also creates difficult decisions. Which guards truly fit together? Which wings can survive playoff targeting? Which role players can contribute without taking the ball away from the stars? The goal is not to collect the most talent. It is to build a rotation that protects Victor's strengths and keeps functioning when he rests. Spurs fans have already seen what this kind of partnership between a superstar and an organization can produce. Tim Duncan did not win the same way for 19 seasons. He changed as the team changed. He won beside David Robinson, then with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili entering their primes, and later in a movement-heavy offense that featured Kawhi Leonard. Duncan remained the foundation while the structure around him evolved. Wembanyama's game is different, but the lesson is the same. San Antonio cannot build one roster and assume it will work forever. The Spurs must keep adapting to Victor, to the league, and to whatever playoff opponents try next. The fourth test is longevity. Wembanyama played 64 regular season games during his third year. That was enough to dominate, win Defensive Player of the Year, and make first-team All-NBA. But one healthy playoff run is only the beginning. LeBron's case is powered by more than 20 years of elite production. Kareem remained great long enough to win championships more than a decade apart. Duncan stayed valuable as his body, role, and teammates changed. Victor does not need to become indestructible. No player is. But he needs enough healthy seasons to accumulate MVPs, playoff runs, and championships without spending his prime constantly restarting. At his level, availability is not a footnote. It is part of the achievement. If Wembanyama clears those 4 tests, the rest of the league will have to change around him. Teams will search for bigger wings, stronger centers, and offensive systems designed to pull him away from the rim. Victor already makes open shots feel temporary because his recovery range removes space that should exist. But being unusual is not enough. His impact becomes historic only if San Antonio turns those advantages into years of postseason success. If teams spend the next decade drafting, trading, and changing how they play specifically to survive the Spurs, that reaction will become part of his legacy. So what would a realistic timeline look like? The next 5 seasons should tell us whether the path remains open. If Wembanyama reaches his late 20s with an MVP, at least one championship as San Antonio's central player, and several healthy All-NBA seasons, the discussion becomes serious. If that resume includes multiple MVPs, repeated finals appearances, and another title, he would be moving at the pace of an all-time career. But if the Spurs repeatedly fall short, if his availability becomes inconsistent, or if playoff defenses prevent him from controlling late possessions, he could still become an all-time great without reaching the very top of NBA history. That is the difference between potential and trajectory. Potential describes what a player might become if everything works. Trajectory is what his real career is already doing. Before his 23rd birthday, Wembanyama has already earned a unanimous Defensive Player of the Year award, first-team All-NBA recognition, a Western Conference Finals MVP, and an NBA Finals appearance. But he still has no regular season MVP, no championship, and only one postseason of evidence. It is no longer ridiculous to ask how far he can climb. It is still far too early to claim that he is close to the summit. The Spurs have given him a real foundation. Castle and Harper have already experienced playoff pressure. Fox gives San Antonio a proven downhill creator. The organization still has time to identify which wings, shooters, and defenders belong in the final version of this rotation. But that does not mean it has unlimited time. Once a superstar reaches this level, every season matters. Contracts become more expensive, young players need larger roles, opponents learn the system. San Antonio must stay patient enough to develop its core without wasting seasons in which Wembanyama is already capable of leading a contender.
The verdict is not that Victor Wembanyama belongs beside Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, Russell, or Duncan today. He does not. The verdict is that his start is strong enough that the possibility no longer sounds like empty hype. Now, the standard changes. Awards must become MVPs. Finals appearances must become championships. One extraordinary postseason must become years of contention. An unmatched physical talent must become the foundation of a system that keeps evolving around him. Wembanyama may have the tools to build one of the greatest careers the league has ever seen, but the next chapter will not be written by highlights alone. It will be written by his health, his decisions in the final minutes of playoff games, and the choices San Antonio makes around him. The talent opened the door. Only sustained winning can take him through it. Would one MVP and one championship by age 27 be enough to make that path feel real, or would you need to see more?